Why you fear success. Jung's explanation of self-sabotage. Picture this, you're standing at the edge of a cliff in your dream, and behind you is everything you've ever wanted, the promotion, the relationship, the life you've been working toward. But instead of stepping back to safety, you feel an inexplicable urge to jump. You wake up disturbed, but here's what's truly unsettling. You realize that in your waking life, you've been sabotaging yourself in exactly the same way. Why do you fear the very success you claim to want? Why does a part of you seem determined to destroy what you've built? What if I told you that Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant minds in psychology, discovered that this self-destructive pattern isn't a flaw in your character? It's actually your psyche trying to protect you from something far more terrifying than failure. Stay with me for the next 15 minutes, because by the end of this journey into the depths of the human psyche, you'll understand not only why you sabotage yourself, but you'll discover Jung's profound insight that will transform how you see every setback, every moment of self-doubt, and every time you've pulled back just when success was within reach. Let me tell you about Maria, a composite of countless individuals Jung encountered in his practice. Maria had everything going for her: brilliant mind, supportive family, clear goals. She was 3 months away from completing her doctoral thesis, something she'd worked on for 4 years, but then something strange happened. She began procrastinating, missing deadlines, and picking fights with her advisor. Her friends were baffled, her family was frustrated, but Jung would have recognized this pattern immediately. You see, Maria wasn't just afraid of failure, she was terrified of success. And according to Jung, this terror runs deeper than our conscious minds can fathom. Jung observed that our psyche is like an iceberg. The conscious mind, what we think we know about ourselves, is merely the tip visible above water. Below the surface lies what he called the unconscious, and within that unconscious dwells our shadow, the repository of everything we've rejected about ourselves, everything we've been taught is unacceptable, everything we fear we might become. Think about your own life for a moment. Can you remember a time when you were on the verge of achieving something significant, only to find yourself suddenly making inexplicable choices that undermined your progress? Maybe you started a fight with someone important just before a crucial meeting. Perhaps you forgot to submit an application on time, or maybe you simply lost motivation when success seemed most attainable. Jung would say, this isn't coincidence, it's your shadow at work. But here's where Jung's insight becomes truly fascinating. He discovered that we don't just sabotage ourselves out of fear of failure. We sabotage ourselves because success threatens to reveal parts of our shadow that we're not ready to confront. Success demands that we step into a larger version of ourselves, and that larger version includes aspects of our personality that we've spent years trying to hide or deny. Let's return to Maria. As Jung worked with similar patients, he found that beneath Maria's fear of completing her thesis lay a deeper terror, the fear of her own power. You see, Maria had grown up in a family where intellectual achievement was simultaneously praised and resented. Her mother was brilliant, but had sacrificed her career for family. Her father was successful, but often absent. Maria learned to associate success with loss, brilliance with isolation, achievement with guilt. Her shadow contained not just her fear of failure, but her fear of becoming someone who others might resent, someone who might have to sacrifice relationships for achievement, someone who might discover that she was more ambitious and powerful than she was comfortable admitting. This is the paradox Jung identified. We fear success not because it might not fulfill us, but because it might reveal who we truly are, and who we truly are might be someone we've been taught to reject. Consider the successful entrepreneur who suddenly makes a series of terrible business decisions just as their company is about to go public. Jung would ask, What aspect of their shadow is threatened by that level of success? Perhaps they learned early in life that wealthy people are greedy or corrupt. Perhaps their family taught them that humility requires limitation, that good people don't seek the spotlight. Their shadow contains the rejected aspects of ambition, power, and visibility, and success threatens to bring these shadow elements into the light. Or think about the artist who finally gets the recognition they've always craved, only to become paralyzed and unable to create. What shadow elements might success illuminate? Perhaps the fear that they're not as talented as others believe, or conversely, the fear that they are, and that this talent comes with responsibilities they're not ready to accept. Jung called this process projection. We project our shadow elements onto others, seeing in successful people the qualities we fear most in ourselves. We tell ourselves that successful people are selfish, that achievement requires compromising our values, that visibility brings danger. And then, when our own success approaches, these projections return to haunt us. But Jung didn't see the shadow as something to be eliminated. He saw it as something to be integrated. This is perhaps his most revolutionary insight. The parts of ourselves that we reject don't disappear. They simply operate outside our conscious awareness, often sabotaging our best efforts. The path to overcoming self-sabotage, according to Jung, isn't to fight against these shadow elements, but to recognize them, understand them, and ultimately integrate them into our conscious personality. This process he called individuation, the journey toward becoming who we truly are, shadows and all. Let me share another story that illustrates this principle. Thomas was a middle manager who had been passed over for promotion 3 times. Each time, just before the final interview, he would say something inappropriate or miss a crucial detail. His colleagues couldn't understand it. He was competent, likable, and deserving. But Thomas was carrying a shadow belief inherited from his working-class family, that leadership required betraying your peers, that management meant becoming the enemy. When Thomas began to explore these shadow beliefs with a Jungian analyst, something remarkable happened. Instead of trying to eliminate these beliefs, he learned to dialogue with them. He recognized that his shadow held valuable wisdom, the importance of loyalty, the dangers of power, the need to stay connected to his roots. But he also recognized that these shadow beliefs had become rigid and limiting. Through this process of shadow integration, Thomas didn't abandon his values. He expanded them. He learned that leadership could be a form of service, that power could be used to protect rather than exploit, that success didn't require betraying his origins, but could honor them in new ways. This is the essence of Jung's approach to self-sabotage. It's not a problem to be solved, but a message to be understood. Our self-sabotaging behaviors are our psyche's way of protecting us from confronting shadow elements we're not yet ready to integrate. But here's what makes this insight so practical. Once we understand this dynamic, we can begin to work with it rather than against it. Instead of fighting our impulses towards self-sabotage, we can ask ourselves, what is this behavior trying to protect me from? What aspect of success am I afraid to embody? What shadow element is being threatened? Jung developed a practice he called active imagination, a way of dialoguing with these shadow elements rather than being unconsciously controlled by them. When Maria learned this technique, she began to understand that her procrastination wasn't simple laziness. It was her shadow's way of protecting her from the responsibility and visibility that success would bring. Instead of fighting against her procrastination, Maria learned to engage with it. What are you trying to tell me? What are you afraid will happen if I complete this thesis? Through this dialogue, she discovered that her shadow held important concerns about maintaining relationships, staying grounded, and not becoming someone she would dislike. Armed with this understanding, Maria could address these concerns directly. She could plan for ways to maintain her relationships while pursuing success. She could develop strategies for staying connected to her values. She could prepare for the responsibilities that success would bring rather than being unconsciously terrified of them. This brings us to a crucial point in Jung's understanding of self-sabotage. It's not random or pathological, it's protective. Our psyche sabotages us to prevent us from becoming someone we've learned to fear or reject. But as Jung discovered, this protection often becomes more limiting than the thing it's protecting us from. Think about your own patterns of self-sabotage. Do you find yourself getting sick before important events? Do you create drama in relationships just when they're going well? Do you make impulsive decisions that undermine your progress? Jung would encourage you to see these behaviors not as character flaws, but as communications from your unconscious, messages about shadow elements that need attention and integration. The most profound example Jung encountered was in his own life. As he was developing his groundbreaking theories and gaining international recognition, he began experiencing what he called his confrontation with the unconscious, a period of intense psychological upheaval that could have destroyed his career and his sanity. But Jung recognized this crisis not as a breakdown, but as a breakthrough, his psyche's way of forcing him to confront shadow elements in his own personality that his success was threatening to bring to light. Instead of running from this experience or trying to suppress it, he engaged with it actively, documenting his visions and dialoguing with the archetypal figures that emerged from his unconscious. This confrontation transformed Jung from a promising psychiatrist into one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century. But more importantly, it taught him that our psychological crises often occur not when we're failing, but when we're on the verge of succeeding in ways that threaten our existing sense of self. This insight has profound implications for how we understand success and failure in our own lives. Every time we sabotage ourselves, we're actually at a threshold, a moment when our psyche is asking us to expand our identity to accommodate a larger version of ourselves. The self-sabotage isn't the problem, it's the invitation to growth. But Jung also discovered something else crucial. We can't integrate what we don't acknowledge. As long as we remain unconscious of our shadow elements, they will continue to sabotage us from the darkness. But when we bring them into the light of consciousness, when we develop a relationship with these rejected parts of ourselves, they stop being enemies and become allies. This is why Jung insisted that the goal isn't to eliminate the shadow, but to integrate it. The ambitious part of yourself that you've rejected might become the drive that fuels your success. The powerful part of yourself that you've denied might become the strength that helps you overcome obstacles. The visible part of yourself that you've hidden might become the authenticity that attracts others to your work. The key is learning to hold these shadow elements consciously rather than being unconsciously controlled by them. When Thomas learned to acknowledge his fear of becoming a bad boss, he could actively work to become a good one. When Maria learned to recognize her fear of isolation, she could proactively build support systems. When we understand what our self-sabotage is protecting us from, we can find healthier ways to address those concerns. Jung also observed that self-sabotage often intensifies just before major breakthroughs. He called this phenomenon the dark night of the soul, a period of intense inner turmoil that often precedes significant psychological growth. Understanding this pattern can help us recognize self-sabotaging behaviors not as signs that we should give up, but as indications that we're closer to breakthrough than we realize. This brings us to the practical application of Jung's insights. When you notice yourself engaging in self-sabotaging behaviors, try asking yourself these questions. What aspect of success am I afraid to embody? What shadow element is being threatened by my potential achievement? What am I trying to protect myself from? What would I have to become that I've been taught to reject? The answers to these questions often reveal the shadow beliefs that are driving your self-sabotage. Maybe you learned that successful people are selfish, so your shadow protects you by ensuring you don't become too successful. Maybe you learned that visible people are targets, so your shadow keeps you hidden. Maybe you learned that powerful people are dangerous, so your shadow keeps you weak. But here's Jung's revolutionary insight. These shadow beliefs are not absolute truths. They're protective strategies that your psyche developed based on early experiences and cultural conditioning. Once you understand them consciously, you can choose whether they still serve you or whether it's time to develop more flexible and empowering beliefs. The process Jung outlined for shadow integration involves several steps. First, recognition, becoming aware of your self-sabotaging patterns and the shadow beliefs that drive them. Second, dialogue, engaging with these shadow elements rather than fighting against them. Third, integration, finding ways to honor the wisdom in your shadow while expanding your identity to include previously rejected aspects of yourself. This process isn't always comfortable. Jung warned that confronting the shadow can be unsettling because it requires us to acknowledge parts of ourselves we've spent years denying. But he also promised that this discomfort is temporary, a necessary passage on the journey toward becoming who we truly are. And this brings us to Jung's most profound insight about success and self-sabotage, the revelation I promised you at the beginning of our journey together. Are you ready? Jung discovered that we don't sabotage ourselves because we're broken or flawed. We sabotage ourselves because we're unconsciously wise. Our psyche knows that the success we think we want, success that requires us to deny parts of ourselves, success that demands we become someone we would dislike, success that forces us to sacrifice our values, isn't actually success at all. It's a form of self-betrayal. The self-sabotage is our unconscious mind's way of protecting us from false success, success that would require us to abandon our authentic self. But when we learn to integrate our shadow, when we expand our identity to include all aspects of ourselves, we can pursue authentic success, success that honors who we truly are, rather than demanding that we become someone else. This is Jung's gift to anyone who has ever wondered why they seem to be their own worst enemy. You're not broken, you're not weak, and you're not doomed to repeat these patterns forever. You're actually unconsciously wise, and your self-sabotage is your psyche's way of protecting you until you're ready to pursue success in a way that integrates all aspects of who you are. The path forward isn't to eliminate your tendency towards self-sabotage, but to understand it, dialogue with it, and ultimately transform it from an unconscious enemy into a conscious ally. When you can hold your ambition and your humility, your power and your vulnerability, your desire for visibility and your need for privacy, when you can integrate these seeming opposites into a coherent sense of self, then success becomes not a threat to who you are, but an expression of who you are. This is the journey of individuation that Jung mapped for us, the path toward becoming fully ourselves, shadows and all. And it's a journey that begins the moment you stop seeing your self-sabotage as a problem to be solved and start seeing it as a mystery to be understood. Your tendency to sabotage yourself isn't evidence of your inadequacy. It's evidence of your unconscious wisdom. Your job isn't to eliminate this wisdom, but to bring it into consciousness, to dialogue with it, and to find ways to honor its protective impulses while still pursuing the authentic success that your soul truly desires. If this exploration of Jung's insights into self-sabotage has resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, where we'll continue our journey into the depths of the human psyche. Leave a comment sharing your own experiences with self-sabotage. What patterns do you recognize in your own life? What shadow elements might be protecting you from false success? And here's what's coming next in our series. We'll explore Jung's understanding of the anima and animus, how the masculine and feminine aspects of our psyche influence our relationships and our creative expression. You won't want to miss this deep dive into how integrating these inner opposites can transform not just how you relate to others, but how you relate to your own creative potential. Remember, every moment of self-sabotage is an invitation to grow. Every setback is a message from your unconscious, and every fear of success is actually a fear of becoming authentically powerful. Jung showed us that the path to true success isn't around our shadows, it's through them. Until next time, be gentle with your self-sabotaging tendencies. They're not your enemy. They're your unconscious mind's way of protecting you until you're ready to embrace all of who you truly are.